Welcome to the Dr. Seraphine Show. This is where high stakes leadership is decoded through neuroscience. I'm Dr. Pamela Seraphine, and in this episode, I am going to decode one of the most misunderstood problems human beings can experience. I'm talking about the painful reality of an identity crisis. Now, this can happen after retirement, after the mission ends, after a career shift, after divorce, anything that triggers a complete collapse of who you thought you once were. When you're having an identity crisis, it can be batshit crazy, incredibly painful, completely destabilizing, and it will give you a beatdown if you let it. Can you tell I've already experienced one? Yes, this is lived experience and my expertise on the topic. So let's get at it. I was inspired to record this episode after listening to a conversation on the Vets and Badges podcast. Now, I wasn't a host on this episode, but it really stuck with me when I heard it. I'm going to leave a link to that interview in the show notes, so you've got to check it out. But it was between the host, a wonderful man, Robert Asencio, and his guest was Albert Rivera. Mr. Rivera is an Army vet and a sergeant major, 30 years of service. Now, such an impressive story, and what an admirable man. You've got to check that podcast out. The conversation was based around being an alpha male in the military culture and what they experienced during service and in transition into civilian life. But what stuck with me was something far more profound than that. From a neuroscience perspective, what I heard was the depth of suffering, which I'm already aware of, but man, does it come clear in that episode. The depth of suffering that people can experience when you lose the structure that you built your identity and your life around. Of course, anyone can experience an identity crisis, but if you're a high stakes professional and you have built your identity around sacrifice and responsibility and complexity and consequence, and often in trauma exposed environments, it is so much more severe. It is a beast of a problem, and this isn't a psychological problem. This is a neurobiological collapse of the architecture of self. It requires a deeper understanding of the human brain and a new model of self, a more advanced model of self. That realization between the difference between high stakes leaders and operators and Gen Pop, the difference of what they experience, really started me on this path of the neuroscience of high stakes leadership, because I am compelled to offer a deeper understanding, because it's not the same as Gen Pop. It's a completely different situation, a different wiring of the neurobiology. That's why I'm so passionate about it, because there's so many misunderstandings. So I'm trying to cover a little bit at a time here. These high stakes environments change the entire human being themselves. And so you've got to learn a completely new way to expand your capacity and expand your identity. And that's what this episode is about. So here I am. If you are a high stakes operator, active or retired, you probably already realize you are a different breed. Without a doubt, hardwired completely different than the Gen Pop. I consider myself a rare breed, so keep that in mind. But the point is that your brain and your nervous system has been conditioned under extreme conditions. Your brain has been conditioned under high levels of responsibility and risk and complications and consequence. And your body has been taught to carry the load and the capacity to be able to ignore some sensory input and prioritize other sensory input. You were likely taught that your mind is the center of self. And if you master your mind, there isn't anything that you can't handle. That's a flawed model and a recipe for disaster. That limited interpretation comes at a neurobiological cost. In other words, you're going to pay for it through suffering, massive confusion of who you are and what you are capable of becoming, or who you are capable of becoming. Because your brain will betray you, and over time it will present itself as a compromised state of being. Your identity does not live in your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, even though it's known to be highly associated with thoughts and emotions of self. There is no sticky note on that particular part of the brain that says, this is where your identity lives. Your identity is a living model. It's been designed and created out of repetition and predictions and bodily state and emotions. So when your old identity no longer fits the life you're living, your brain and your body will fight you. It will fight you. It is an absolute threat to your survival. That's how your mind is going to interpret it. And it's painful. And you can't think your way out of it. There lies the problem. You need a new model of self, a much more sophisticated model of self, because your essence of self doesn't live in your brain, and you are not your brain or your mind or your body. Can you tell where I'm going with this? You can't think your way out of this type of problem because you have a limited model of your internal chain of command. And yes, there really is an internal chain of command. This is why I use the 4 entities of self: brain, body, mind, soul. Now, to be clear, these are not abstract concepts. I define them as functional entities within your internal chain of command. So let's go through each one. Number 1, your brain is a biological processor. It processes, it predicts, and it protects. Number 2, your body is the physiological regulator. It carries emotion and the biological state you're living in. And the mind is a biased interpreter. It creates thoughts and images and interprets the narrative of your identity. And your soul is the commander of self. It's your conscious self, your essence of self, your life force. It gives you purpose and direction and a deeper meaning for your life. You can't pretend you don't have a soul or just erase it from the formula like you're your mind and your brain, but no soul. Oh, the suffering that will happen just because of that. Somehow along the way, there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding on this topic. I'll talk about it in other episodes. However, I think one of the problems is when you combine the neuroscience with the soul, there is this fear, for one thing, that you can no longer be analytical or logical or rational because you have all the science behind it, and therefore you can't actually claim you have a soul. However, that's such a limited way of thinking. And you do yourself a disservice because you're going to live a soulless life. And I'm not talking about you got to be tuned into your intuition at all times. You have to be aware that you have a soul that is in command of the rest of you. And it works together with the brain, with the mind, with the body, not separate, not invisible, like it doesn't exist. Because when you're getting a beat down from your identity crisis, your soul's going to be calling out to you, and you better be listening. Because your brain will try to process the loss. Your body will try to carry this heavy weight of transformation. And your mind's going to try to create a new narrative and interpret what you're going through to become the new you. But your soul asks deeper questions. Who are you now? And who are you becoming? These are the questions that have to be integrated across your 4 entities of self. This is how you expand your identity and create new possibilities for yourself. And this is so worth digging into. Your life's worth digging into and expanding your capacity. It can't just be the old you or less than. Whenever you're going through a transition, you always evolve. You always expand. It's never less than, especially if you've been elite, like so many of my clients, you never lower the bar. You always expand. Because when you understand all this, you'll understand why shallow, surface level motivation is not going to pull you out of the deep pit of darkness that an identity crisis will throw you into. Now, this exercise you can actually do even if you're not having an identity crisis, but man, it'll sure help if you're going that direction. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 simple steps, but very valuable. So just because it's simple doesn't mean it's not valuable. And I am going to give you the guide, the detailed guide in the show notes. This is called the identity recalibration. And I've got to let you know that it's actually part of a larger model that I developed called the undercover effect. It's going to be highlighted in an upcoming interview I did on policing matters. And so I'll share that when it comes out. But this is the final stage of the undercover effect called the identity recalibration. So this exercise is very important for you to actually run through and take the time to actually do it. Step 1, all you've got to do is write out 3 words to describe who you see yourself as right at this moment. Not how others see you, not how you wish somebody would see you. Just who you see yourself to be. Just 3 words to describe that. Write that down. Step 2, then you're going to take a look at the identity recalibration list of words that I've added to expand your future identity. You want to choose 3 words that are going to elevate you and take you to the next level. Now, these 3 words should usually make you sweat a little because they're beyond what you're comfortable with. You don't want to play small here. There's no reason to play small. There's nothing about you that's average. So choose 3 words that describes who you want to become and write that out. I am becoming XYZ. It just sounds so easy, doesn't it? Okay, the 3rd step. Now, are you ready? This is the hard part. You're going to choose 3 new roles. And this is what people get stuck on. Because if you had the role of something very specific for a very long time, you usually have narrowed your identity to just that. So I've given you a list to choose from. Now, the role might be something that you're expanding towards, or something that is at your core of who you are and you're returning to it. But 3 roles, now that's a real push for something different because you might just see yourself as only in a couple roles or a couple titles, whatever you would call yourself. But maybe you're meant to become an athlete. Maybe you're meant to become a visionary. Maybe it's a creator, or maybe it's something else. There's a list there. Go through that. Choose 3. Not 1, not 2, 3. Because that's going to help give your brain direction, what to focus on. Now, it sounds so easy. It's so not, not to follow through and actually take action to become that person, because your brain's going to go into high threat mode. And now it's a perceived threat, but it doesn't know it is. And I'll give you an example for myself, because this podcast, for me to put the identity and the role of becoming a podcast host, that wasn't even on the radar. There was no point that I thought, oh, this would be a great idea. I want to be a podcast host. It sounded incredibly complicated, and I don't know how much reward would come from it. But once I had that into my identity, and life gave me the opportunity to take this role on, fantastic. I'm all in because it's who I am. I've already embedded it into my identity. It doesn't matter if people don't see it or if I'm not getting all the big props. It's who I am. It's how I express myself now. And I have the freedom and full autonomy, which are values to me. And like I said, that wasn't a role that I would have ever chosen before. And all of a sudden, here it is. And that's what it should be like for you. It's 3 new roles that are just light you up. And they're not about survival anymore. Maybe it's something that just sets your soul on fire. Now, it's likely going to be very challenging because you're likely the type of person who loves the challenge. Get back in the game, get competitive again. And maybe you just want to be a peaceful husband, father, I don't know what the words, mother, whatever words you want to choose. It's up to you. Now, to me, I'm pretty high energy, so I'm going all the way. But that's my identity. That's what my soul calls me to do. You got to tap into what your soul is calling you to do. And never forget you have a soul, and your soul is asking the question, who are you now and who are you becoming? And that answer is worth pursuing. I promise you that. That's it for today's episode. I will be leaving the link to the Vets and Badges podcast, the graphic of the 4 entities of self in case you need a reminder, and the guide to the identity recalibration in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. And if this episode has resonated with you and you're ready to take action, then you can find out more about my high performance coaching and clinical counseling services at drpamelaseraphine.com. This work is grounded in the principles of my #1 best-selling book, Neuromastery: Unlocking Your Brain's Potential for Lasting Success. This is the Dr. Seraphine Show. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.